It's the Wilk Report. I'm Michael Wilk, coming to you from Cleveland, Ohio, with an epic review of the Orville Season 2, Episode 12, Sanctuary. Got a lot to unpack here, and it's going to be a spoiler-laden review, so if you haven't watched this week's episode, I highly suggest you turn this video off, go watch it, then come back here. If you have seen it, or if you don't care about spoilers, stick around, because we've got a lot to unpack here, so I'm just going to get started. So we open with Admiral Halsey assigning the Orville to ferry a couple of Moclan engineers to some kind of trip in exchange for upgrading the Orville's weapon systems. Ed quips that they're feeling like a taxi cab, but it's a small price to pay, according to Halsey, for bigger guns. So the engineers are hiding something. We don't know quite what, but it's in this weird metal suitcase that they've brought on board. But right off the bat, they're up to something. We don't know quite what. But as this episode was directed by Star Trek alum Jonathan Frakes, you just know things are going to get pretty intense. So, yeah. So, Marina Sirtis, who was also slated to appear in this season, does finally make her appearance in this episode. There was some speculation as to what role she would play. Rumors were flying that she was like some kind of inquisitor sent to track down a pair of Moclans, but that's not really the case. No, she's actually playing a school teacher, specifically Topa's school teacher, because Topa is having problems getting along with the female classmates, to the point where he actually pushes a girl down after taking her Lego blocks, I guess. Kleinen, of course, is being the typical defender of Moclan values and culture. He suggests separating the boys and the girls, because he wants to force the ship to accommodate his sensibilities. But, this really isn't realistic. Marina Sirtis, of course, is not really keen on that. None of the other boys in the class have any problems with the girls, only Topa. And this is because Kleiden is instilling Moclan prejudices against females in his and Bortus's son. Bortus, for his part, promises to do something about it. Then, of course, later on in their quarters, he chastises Topa for, being combative with his classmates. Topa is, kind of defiant. I feel for the kid. He's torn, because on the one hand, he is Bortus's hatchling, but on the other hand, Kleiden is a bigot and teaching their son to be a bigot. So, Bortus lays down the law and, says, we'll discuss your punishment later, but, he's understandably upset, because Kleiden is being, his usual unreasonable self. He thinks that the entire ship has to, essentially cater to Moclan sensibilities. And he doesn't seem to realize that, this is not a Moclan vessel. If it was, it would be a moot point because there would be no conflict over the matters. But they're not on board a Moclan ship. They're aboard a Union ship. Bortus realizes this, but Kleiden, no. So even though Kleiden is saying, look, Bortus, I don't mean any harm. I'm just trying to do what's right. And, but Bortus, like I said, he's not really having it. He's been putting up with Kleiden's bigotry, from the past 2 seasons now, and it's starting to wear on him, and it's, it's really a source of strain on the marriage because, try being married, if you're more liberal-minded than the rest of your people and you're married to someone who's much more conservative and traditional in beliefs and values. Yeah, that's going to cause a lot of tension. So anyway, While all this is going on, uh, Isaac discovers an increased use of energy in the Moclan guests' quarters, and Ed and Kelly decide to send Bortus to go investigate. Uh, I mean, it's not that they're necessarily opposed to the Moclans upping their energy consumption, but it's just it's kind of rude. You're a guest aboard the ship, and if you're going to plug something in, ask and get permission first. So, yeah, and I'm kind of, I'm just going to digress a little bit here because I find it kind of odd that as yet we've really seen no episodes devoted to the tension between Isaac and the rest of the crew. Uh, because of I mean, we've heard references to the Kalan threat building up, but, we haven't really seen much in the way of conflict between Isaac and the rest of the crew or any, lingering resentment over his actions in the Moclan invasion. So I think that is something that I would like to see addressed pretty soon. Uh, Getting back to point, all right, so they detect the increased energy usage. It's coming from the Moclan guest quarters. Bortus is sent to investigate. But what he finds there when he catches the guests in a lie, it's something unexpected. And it turns out that what the Moclans are transporting is their baby girl. They're seeking refuge on another planet where they hope to raise their child as a female without having her undergo sex reassignment surgery, uh, which is basically forced. I mean, most Moclans don't have a problem with it, but some do, and they don't want their kids being altered. In fact, if you remember back to season 1, episode 3, about a girl, Ed found and tracked down a Moclan woman who had lived in seclusion on Moclus, and who turns out was Moclus's greatest writer. Very well respected, but she was masquerading as a man through that, so it kind of threw everything into turmoil there. So Bortus, even though he's agreed to keep the Moclan guests secret, he doesn't want his son growing up to be as bigoted as his husband, so he decides to pull him out of school early and, show him the Moclan baby girl. And this actually, and we'll see how this pays off later on in the episode, but, Bortus is trying to make a genuine effort to save his child from, growing up closed-minded and mean and so, but even though he promised he wouldn't tell anyone, Clyden obviously has his ways of getting information out of people. So he goes to Captain Mercer and they call Bortus in to dress him down for keeping this secret from them. Which not necessarily because they disagree with what's being done, because obviously they wouldn't, having defended Bortus and tried to prevent Topa from being altered, but they have no way of knowing if the Moclans are really her parents or what their intentions really are. So they go following the ship and they track it to a nebula where because the ship they had tried to hide their quantum drive signature, but Gordon came up with this idea like, hey, look, I tried this thing in school once and it worked right up until I crashed the shuttle, but so they use that to figure out where the ship went, and they track it to this nebula where there's a habitable planet, and it turns out that there's a colony of Moclan women living on this planet. When the away team, including Captain Mercer and Bordas and Kelly land, they are immediately surrounded by Moclan women with guns, and they're taken to see the leader of the colony. Because as it turns out, this is where the Moclan engineers were taking their baby daughter because they lied about their destination, which is understandable. It's they couldn't risk being followed because, as it turns out, there are more Moclan women born than the government is willing to admit. And most of them are altered to become male, but some choose not to, or their parents choose not to go through it, and instead of having them be outcasts in Moclan society or being forced to do it, they come to this colony, and it's led by none other than Havina, who we saw in season 1, episode 3, and she is more pragmatic. Her lieutenant suggests that they don't let the Orville leave because they can't possibly keep 300 crew members silent. But Havina is more practical. She realizes that if the Orville could find them, the Moclans, who are much more suspicious and intent on finding this rogue colony, they'll probably find it eventually too. So Ed comes up with the possible solution. Well, why don't we just take your case to the Union Council and petition for recognition as an independent state, that would have full protection of the Planetary Union. That way you wouldn't have to hide anymore, and that way if the Moclans do come for you, you'll have us at your back. So Havina agrees to go with Ed to Earth for the petition at the suggestion of Admiral Halsey, and the Orville then is to stay behind and make sure that the colony is safe while all this is going on, because the Moclan delegation is up in arms and they're threatening to, they want all the women extradited back to Moclans to be altered and imprisoned for what they claim is kidnapping their babies, which is total bullshit. But that's what they're setting up. So the High Council meeting takes place. Havina is there with Admiral Halsey and Ed on the one side, and then you've got the Moclan delegation on the other. And Marina Sirtis is not the only Star Trek alumnus to appear here. We've got Tony Todd as the head of the Moclan delegation. So yeah, lots of nods to Star Trek: The Next Generation, which I like in this show. It shows that it's not just a love letter to Star Trek. It is, in spirit, if not strictly in letter, a continuation of Star Trek and its traditions. So yeah, there's Tony in the middle, and really unrecognizable under all that makeup. When he was playing Worf's brother Kurn on Star Trek: The Next Generation and Star Trek: Deep Space Nine, you could tell because of the Klingon makeup that left the lower half of their faces recognizable, but underneath all that Moclan makeup, you really can't tell it's him except for his voice. So yeah, really good job here, guys. But they did kind of give it away in the credits when it opened. But so yeah, the Moclan delegation demands the extradition of the women. Oh yeah, we've also got F. Murray Abraham as the head of the Union Council, which really tickles me to death because they are getting all the big names here in Hollywood. Ted Danson, Kelly Hu, F. Murray Abraham. Star Trek alumni like Marina Sirtis and Tony Todd and Tim Russ in Lasting Impressions. So yeah, lots of people want to be on the Orville. And F. Murray Abraham, an actor of his caliber, I mean, if you wonder where all the money for this season was going, it was going into Identity Parts 1 and 2, and also for actors like Abraham. So, you know, be glad that the Orville is going to such expense to have good storytelling here. So, yeah, Havina makes her case before the Planetary Union High Council. Uh, Actually quotes a Dolly Parton song that she heard on the way to Earth. Uh, yeah, and that song actually plays a big part later on in the episode. But yeah, yeah. So she makes a really impassioned speech arguing for uh, the colony and their independence from Moklis. Uh, but the Moklan delegation pulls a real dick move in that they bring up the prospect of seceding from the Union and joining up with the Krill in order to survive against the Kalon. And also they use the fact that Moklis supplies the Planetary Union with its weapons as a blackmailing tool. So yeah, despite Havina's impassioned speech and the applause that she gets for making it, because the people in the chamber, they're from all over the Planetary Union, lots of species there. Got members from Dan's species, species we haven't seen before. We've even got members from Yaphet's species. So, then of course we've got Solans. But while all this is going on, a Moklan warship appears in the nebula with orders to go down to the surface and round up the women and take them back to Moklis for sex reassignment surgery at the first opportunity. So, yeah, things are escalating. And that ship is really badass, I have to say. I mean, granted, the aesthetics in the Orville, you can't say that they're slouching. And I also like that they're using real models here. I mean, yeah, they do have a fair amount of CGI, but it's not the sort of CGI that is that and only that. They do actually have real models because it looks more realistic. You've got something physical to react to. So, yeah, so the Moklan ship arrives. Kelly has a conversation with the Moklan captain who basically warns them, don't interfere in what's really a Moklan internal matter. And then Kelly, for her part, is trying to say, look, let's wait until the council reaches a decision before we start something that neither of us really wants to start. But she does decide, look, we've got to get a message off to Ed and let him and the Admiralty know what's going on. And yeah, things are really stepping up. And you can see, like, the Moklan captain, he's all dressed for business. But you can tell things are going to get serious because Kelly gets her own game face on. And yeah, and once it comes up, you'll see. But I'll put it to you this way: I would not want to have a staring contest with Adrienne Palicki because she just nails like, yeah. I mean, as bad as the GI Joe movies were, her role as Lady J was pretty badass. So yeah, Ed is trying to argue with the Admiralty about why the Moklans would be insane to abandon the Union and try and go it alone. The Admiralty is not so sure. They're taking the more cowardly position. Trying to use the excuse of we have to respect their culture and way of life and not impose our own values on them. But Ed's not having it. He's arguing. Look, let's just lay it out. The only reason the Mocklins are even in the Union is because we need their weapons. But that doesn't mean that we should allow them to oppress their own people. Otherwise, what are we fighting for? So anyway, Bortus and Kelly are drinking in the ship lounge. Clyden comes over and demands that Bortus come home. Bortus really starts spilling his feelings, towards Clyden. He's run out of patience with Clyden's bigotry and his intolerance. He points out how Clyden hardly ever leaves his quarters. Points out how when he walked in, he didn't even bother to greet Commander Grayson, or even, and he's talking as though she's not even in the room. Kelly goes to leave. Bortus says, no, please stay. And he starts reading Clyden the riot act. He's saying, look, you've basically been a hermit here, and you've been small-minded and clinging to outdated traditions, and basically he's about done, and I can't blame him. Try being married to someone like that. Yeah, you fell in love, but Clyden is so rigid, that he thinks that the entire ship of the crew of the Orville has to accommodate his sensibilities as a Mocklin, and he refuses to give so much as an inch, and recognize that he is on board a ship full of people alien to him, and that he has to find a way to get along with all of them if he wants to stay, but he doesn't really want to. So the Mocklin captain decides, look, I've got my orders. We're to go and round up the women and take them back to Moklas for sex reassignment surgery and to answer for their perceived crimes. Kelly orders the communications sent to Earth to tell Ed what's going on, and then she gets her game face on. And like I said, you really don't want to get into a staring contest with this woman, because I suspect that she will win. So that should come up any second now. But I really, so you can tell, shit's about to hit the fan, and it's like, whoa, this is like, we got to do something about this, but at the same time, we're under orders to keep the peace. So Kelly's about to get serious herself. And I gotta say, I can't say this enough. I am amazed at the quality of the writing here. You're expected to take a position here and say, look, the Admiralty is being kind of cowards here. They're, as is the Council. They're, on the one hand, they're in a bad position because, they've basically placed all their eggs in the Mocklin basket as far as their defense systems go, and if they lose the Mocklins, that's a bad thing. So they're kind of screwed, and that the Mocklins are so easily able to blackmail them is disgusting. Here's it. Kelly's game face, where it's like, the shit's about to hit the fan, but you know what? I'm going to hurl it right back. So like I said, you don't want to get into a staring contest with this woman, guys. Just, even if she's nothing like the tough persona she appears on the show in real life, do I want to test that? Probably not, nor would I want to. So it just kind of shows, how badass an actress she is, because, she's able to project that. So once the Admiralty finds out what's going on, Halsey, drops a not so subtle hint to Ed, who's a bit slow to catch on, saying, look, officially they're not to take any action that would start a war with the Mocklins, but unofficially, do what you need to protect those people there on the colony, because hey, communications in a nebula can be dicey, and message may not get through, so, and so yeah, this is the comedic moment here where just to kind of lighten some of the tension here, because we need it at this point, because things are about to get real. And I really love how Jonathan Frakes directed this episode. I mean, things start getting really intense. We see some of his action sequences from the two Star Trek movies he directed. The Mocklins are kind of like going to town. They're rounding the women up, but things don't stay on top for them. Commander Grayson and Bordas show up to start kicking butt. And yeah, Kelly and Bordas really start kicking ass and taking names. Kelly especially. The Mocklin women are not going to go quietly into the good night. They start fighting back. But yeah, I mean, Kelly is like, she's, when she's not shooting people, she's, bitch slapping them with her rifle. She's, she gets disarmed. She starts kicking out, really kind of kicking the Mocklins and their family jewels. I mean, yeah, just, and of course, this is all being done to Dolly Parton's 9 to 5, which is hilarious. Like I said, I love the way this show really manages to pull all this off and make it work, and also keep it lighthearted enough that you're not, completely, on the edge of your seat here. They do have their moments where, yeah, they are allowed to be lighthearted and not go too far off the rails. So yeah, and also she gets a pretty good line in where it's like she warns the Mocklins off. They say, we're not listening to you. This is an eternal matter. Go away. And Kelly's retort is, yeah, just like a guy doesn't listen, and then she starts blasting away and kicking ass. Like I said, just kind of bitch slapping this, people with their guns. The Mocklin women, for their part, they're also doing likewise. They're, like I said, they're not going to go quietly. They're, breaking vases over people's heads. They're jumping on backs. They're, getting weapons away from the males and shooting back. I mean, a lot of it, this is a real battle with real stakes, and it's not until, of course, Bordas gets his own shots in, but but this battle belongs to the gals, all right, and for all the complaints about STD and the way it depicts women and minorities and representation, I have to hand it to the writers of the Orville for getting representation right, because like the original Star Trek, real Star Trek, the Orville does have a diverse cast. They've got people of color, they've got women, they've got on screen at least a gay couple who go through all the problems that a straight couple would, and that's a realistic depiction. So, but yeah, getting back to the review, so Halsey and Captain Mercer are trying to continue their case. Ed points out that, look, the Krill and the Mocklins are not going to survive a Kalan attack. It's only by standing together with the rest of the Planetary Union and the Krill and the Mocklins that they're going to survive. If they don't, all right, if the Mocklins secede and, even if they do join up with the Krill, they're going to be wiped out by the Kalan. And, the rogue colony of women, they're just out of the way enough that they'll likely survive. And the only Mocklin left alive will be female. And they'll still be a single-sex species. And that kind of shuts up Tony Todd's character. But Halsey kind of saves the day here where, he proposes a compromise in order to protect the colony. He proposes that the Union, will not recognize the colony, and Havina and her people will not try to smuggle infant females off-world again for the foreseeable future. And in return, the Moclans agree to leave the colony alone. It's not the best solution. It's the one that works right now. F. Murray Abraham kind of like, is like, yeah, it's, yeah, it is kind of a dick move that the Moclans have pulled, and it's not the best solution, but, it's the one they're going to have to work with for now. But you can just tell that this is something that is going to have to be addressed in a future episode. So, Fox, renew the Orville for season 3, because I want to see more of this storyline and this storytelling. Stop playing with our feelings here. Renew the Orville, please. I can't see why you wouldn't. I mean, this show just has it all. It's got everything that STD doesn't. It respects the intelligence of the audience. It doesn't try to shove things down your throat. So yeah, the episode ends. Topa is getting along with his female classmates now, having learned and grown, and so there's hope for him yet. We'll see what happens. And Bortus cracks a rare smile as he realizes that his son will probably be okay. But so yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it as far as the review. Like I said, lots of spoilers, so I hope you saw the episode before you watched this. If not, shame on you. But yeah, like I said, I really like this episode. I mean, the crew here, they do representation right. They they don't insult your intelligence. They don't talk down to you. They don't try and shove all their stuff down your throat. They actually challenge you to take a position. And their messaging and even their political messaging and their social messaging is done in a way that actually respects your intelligence. It asks you to pick a side, just like the original Star Trek did, but they're a lot more nuanced about it. There are no easy answers or solutions here. Just like in real life. All right. Because in original Star Trek, because of the nature of televised storytelling at the time, when something went into syndication, episodes would be broadcast out of order, and so each episode had to be self-contained, and you couldn't afford to go back and revisit the consequences of decisions made. So, I like how McFarlane here doesn't take that easy route out, because this is more like the hybrid era of storytelling, where late 80s, early 90s, where they were transitioning from episodic television that was self-contained stories that can stand alone, and the more serialized form where you've got larger story arcs. So I kind of like that hybrid storytelling. You're not being set up with that stupid magic mystery box. You actually can watch this almost in any order, but obviously it will help if you have seen the preceding episode that refers back. So, but yeah, so what do you think of this episode? Did you like it? Did you not like it? Do you want to see the Orville renewed for a third season? I know I do. I'll have a poll embedded in the video here. Let me know what you think. I want to hear your opinion. If you like what you've heard and you want to hear more, hit the subscribe button and the bell icon to receive notification whenever we upload new content. And if you want to help support the channel, please head over to our Patreon or Subscribestar page. We can't do this without you. We need to keep the lights on, so your help is appreciated. Until next time, when I will be reviewing Shazam and The Twilight Zone this weekend. This is Michael Wilk for the Wilk Report.